Okay, good evening everybody. Welcome to this evening's additional scrutiny meeting. We have, it looks like a light table for this evening. There's some online as well. So, first thing on the agenda, minutes. Do I have your authorisation as chairman to sign the minutes of the Open and Scrutiny Committee meeting held earlier this month on the 8th of September 2025 as a correct record of the proceedings?
So move.
Thank you. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you very much. Apologies and substitutions. This evening we have apologies from...
Councillors John Barnes, Clark and McGurk. Councillor Gordon is present as substitute for Councillor John Barnes, and Councillor Chowdhury is present as substitute for Councillor McGurk.
Thank you. And joining us online we have Councillors Maynard and Councillors Mary Barnes, and then we have other members including Councillor Prochak, Councillor McCourt and Councillor McLean. Okie dokie. Additional agenda items, there are none. Disclosure of interest and dispensations, I would assume there are none, except if anyone's probably a member of East Sussex County Council, I suppose. Councillor Maynard.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. Can I declare that interest as an executive member of East Sussex County Council? Apologise that I can't be this evening in person. Obviously, this still with me. And also, can I take this opportunity to just, on behalf of, I'm sure, all councillors, to wish Councillor Barnes a speedy recovery. Thank you, Chairman.
Yep. Just in case, Councillor Barnes, I believe, is in hospital undergoing tests, but I don't think it's bad, but it shouldn't be.
Can I just come in here and just assure everybody?
Mary, tell us what's what.
Right. Well, he had a slight setback following an operation he had 3 weeks ago, which has landed him in hospital for the last week with a clot in a place which nobody would really want to have a clot. And he is now, I think, declared pretty well fit for leave. So they were telling us tonight that all being well, he should be coming home tomorrow. So all is well. But it certainly wasn't last Monday night when he was rushed into Eastbourne Hospital. So, but he's fine now. Thank you very much indeed for your good wishes.
Thank you very much, Mary, and that is good news. Thank you. Additional agenda items, there are none. Disclosure of interest, we've done that. Item 5, basically the business of this evening, local government reorganisation, business case for local government reorganisation in East Sussex, on the page 3, and it trundles off onto page 200 as well. So we have the leader of the council here this evening, Councillor Oliver. Doug, over to you.
Yes. I'll say that again. Thank you for the invitation to come this evening. It's nice to be here. And, this is the next stage, if you like, as to where we are. I think we all know where we've come over these last few months, with the government making an announcement back in December last year, and at a pretty quick pace we are where we are at this moment in time, with a submission due to go through to the government by the 26th of September. A significant amount of work has got involved in this, and we've at all levels, with all officers and members that have been involved in bringing this forward. And I think tonight is an opportunity for members to ask questions with regard to some of the situation with regard to the business case, which you've all had sight of. I don't think there's a question and answer multiple choice question paper at the end of all this, Paul, is there, for those that have read it or otherwise? Because there's an awful lot in there to have gone through. And it's been a significant amount of work to get to where we are. Contributions have been made by our own officers, and in fact Alice, who's joined us tonight, was very much involved in submitting some of the information that was required. Democratic Services are involved and our community officers also involved in providing information, and our 151 officer. So significant amount of work has gone into this, and that's been done by all the district and boroughs within East Sussex to get to where we are at this moment in time. There's been an excellent contribution from the consultants who have led us through how it will be received at the other end, and I'm sure Lorna will be able to identify that we have complied with the model that the government have asked, and therefore you don't change the rules on the basis that they've said it's compliant because of the following, and therefore you try to adhere to that on the basis that it has less disruption perhaps, but it also fits what the government are looking to do. I've said it more than once, there are more questions than answers. I've said it more than once, it's being done to us, but we're in this situation now, and I think that we now need to make sure that we can provide an outcome that's for the benefit of our residents within Rother and the Greater East Sussex, if that is the way forward. There are other proposals, but I think tonight we're just discussing I think you're just discussing, if I may say, Paul, the business the business case that's gone forward. So I'm more than happy to respond to any questions that come forward, but I'm sure Lorna is well placed from a technical point of view to make sure that you've go away tonight with all the answers. If you do get all the answers, I'd like to know.
Okie dokie, thank you very much. I think it's worth saying that we can't necessarily change this document for two reasons. One, we've got to get it sent off by Thursday. It's got to be debated at full council on Wednesday, and then the decision taken cabinet after full council again on Wednesday. Also, this is not just our document; it's everybody's. It's a collaboration with Wilden and Lewis and Eastbourne and Hastings and East Sussex and us. So we can't sort of, as same as anyone else, can't drive a coach and horses through it and so on, change this and change that, because it simply is not the time to do it, basically. So there we are. I think the only slight change that may be is that on the front sort of page, where we've got Lewis, Wilden, Eastbourne, Rother, Hastings and East Sussex, I think Wilden will be removed because Wilden now don't want to be part of it. Quite what Wilden would do, I don't know. But there'd be a sticker put over Wilden, but that's it. Lorna, anything to add?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just talk through a very high level what the business case does really. But just to take you back to last December, we didn't even know about local government reorganisation back in last December. And ever since then, we've been living and breathing LGR. So the government published its plans for devolution, and LGR was part of that back in December. And you'll recall that the upper tier authorities requested that we be part of the devolution priority programme, which meant that we had to do this a little bit quicker than everyone else that was still in a two-tier area. We then had a full council debate on the 19th of March, and our interim plan was very much endorsed by the council to go forward and develop a proposal for one council for East Sussex. So that is what we have been doing since then, working as the leader said, in a collaborative way with the districts and boroughs and the county council to produce the business plan that we have before us this evening. We do have a deadline of, I think it's Friday the 26th, to submit the proposal. So we are quite limited on what we can change in terms of the document, but we do have the opportunity to add things to the covering letter that goes with our proposal. And I think we might want to consider that as a route to make any comments that we wish to make back to government. Just to give a little bit of background to what of how it's structured. There are basically three options that are set out in the business case. The first one is One East Sussex, so a single unitary authority covering the current East Sussex boundaries. Option 2 is 2 unitary authorities, and that divides East Sussex into 2 councils. I should just say on that model, that isn't based on any kind of geography. That's just saying if there were 2 councils, not 1, this is what it would cost, this is how it might work. Because we didn't have a proposal that came forward in time to assess. So we kind of had to come up with this hypothetical model of what 2 councils would look like. The third option was a proposal that came forward from Brighton and Hove, which was about the expansion into parts of Lewis, and there's 4 variations of that option. But unfortunately, the proposal that we've now seen from Brighton and Hove that came out last Wednesday, there was no time to assess that against the model that we have in front of us. So unfortunately, that it just wasn't possible in the time that we had. Would just make a couple of other comments. The One Sussex proposal delivers operational efficiencies and also avoids the significant costs associated with disaggregating county council functions, and that is the reason that it's coming forward. In comparison, as you'll see from the business case, to the 2 council model, it offers a more effective way of doing local government and avoids the disruption. I think that's a really, really important point. That not only costs money and time, it also has an impact on our residents. So that is a very strong message, I think, that comes through the business case. There was engagement on the proposals, and this ran from May through to June this year. There was a variety of methods that were used to gather the views of residents and stakeholders. There was an online survey where 5,500 people took part. And there were also some focus groups, one focus group in each district and borough to get behind some of what we were learning from the survey. In addition to that, there were also some user groups and to find out what their thoughts were on the impact of LGR. And Alice is here this evening if anybody has any questions about any of that. She was very involved. So just, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, if I can. As Doug says, it is a very long paper, and if there are any sort of, if I can't answer a question tonight, I will come back so you have time before for council on Wednesday to consider any answers to those questions. But really, this evening, the recommendation is that we consider the business case and its appendices and provide comments for consideration by full council to enable Cabinet to approve the proposal on the 24th of September for submission by the 26th. So that's our job this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I did have Councillor Mary Barnes did have her hand up. I'm sure John has given her a list of what to say. So, Mary, are you there?
How unfair. Yes. Yes, ma'am. No, it's just having read through this very carefully, what a superb piece of work. It really is a star example of how a council gets something right, and well done. But there is one thing that occurred to both of us, and that is very scant mention of the high Weald landscape. They talk about the rolling hills of the High Weald once or twice, but really, since it's one of our greatest treasures, is the medieval landscape with which we are blessed. And there's no mention of the Pevensey Levels or the Ramsar site. If it's possible to just squeeze those in somewhere, just to give them extra protection, it would be really appreciated, I think, by those of us who sit at planning, knowing that we do have a national treasure in the High Weald landscape. And I hope I'm just not being picky, but it would be really nice to see it in there. That's my first point, I suppose. Really.
Is that it, Mary? Are there more, or is?
Well, I can go down my very sort of not a huge list. it's just a comment that actually came from John, which was how the biggest advantage of the whole of this is the integration of housing and social services. Now, I'm, of course, not old enough to remember when it was actually broken up back in the 70s, but it is very good to see housing and social services being put together. If that is true, I mean, I said to him, you know, I couldn't see any reference to this, and it's, you know, it's in a different paper, but that is going to be a huge benefit if that is true, of having this one East Sussex in play. So that was my second point. And the third one is, he says, while area committees are clearly a good idea, they seem to have little clout elsewhere. Therefore, serious considerable attention to integrate them into the scrutiny system, both upstream and ex post facto. There's a delicate balance to be struck between the importance of locality and not having too many. That probably means that they need to be of varied size. Now, that's straight from John Barnes, that's not from me. But my bit is really concerned about the Pevensey levels and the historic High Road landscape. So, you know, that's it, Paul. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mary. I suppose that sort of one thing that comes out is how's it going to work? Yeah, we up over in Eastern Rother, we have planning and everything else, but you know, I go to my parishes and they say, our planning decisions are made by people all the way from Bexhill. It's not exactly the other side of the world, but potentially there could be anyone making the plan decisions. I don't know. So I'm assuming that, but it's not going to be covered in this, is it? This is going to be, you know, the planning, you know, our officers will still be regional or district sort of wide. You know, our planning officers here will still deal with this area, and you know, those in Wilden and those in Lewis will deal with their area of expertise. Same with environmental health. I would assume that, you know, how the new authority is run, that they would, you know, not everybody wouldn't be expected to drive to I'm assuming Lewis and then drive back. They would work their own patch as they have done for the last 50 years. So that's the sort of stuff that, you know, will probably be more minutiae and how they run it. And, you know, and if anybody sort of rocks up as homeless, we know they come and knock on our door. Well, as long as this door or a door close to them is still available, because you don't want to drive all the way to Lewis or somewhere to go back to Canberra to try and find somewhere to live. So I'm assuming regional offices or element of a town hall or something will still be available. I don't know, but there he is. Councillor Mrs Cook.
Thank you very much indeed. So I want to speak in favour of One East Sussex being a much more inclusive offer for us all, with resultant savings in not having to do boundary changes, which the other two options offer. I also believe that, given restrictions of government funding and the increase in need as detailed in the proposal on housing, mature social care, SEND and child social care, on all our emergency services and the NHS, actually East Sussex County Council have done their very best. However, having carefully read page 48 forwards, 7 options appraisal, I am increasingly concerned about the lack of respect given to town and parish councils. The report talks about area committees but doesn't say how that's going to work. But across our district alone, our towns and parishes have varying different responsibilities, even our 3 towns. I mean, Rye has an amazing tourism model, whilst Battle has a Gold Award recreation ground. Some parishes have no such specific responsibilities. Consultations online do not really give towns and parishes a chance to express their opinions. And indeed, in the last 6 months, Battle Town Council have met with Rother District Council and created some amazing and positive dialogue with results. To date, we've never known that at county level. Is there any chance that this will continue with One East Sussex? My second point is on an MSA, which really sounds like it's something you pick up in hospital. What is this mode for the MSA? Is it just one East Sussex? Is it one East Sussex and one West Sussex? Is it going to be one East Sussex, one West Sussex, Brighton and Hove? Or horror of horrors, is it going to include Surrey too? How are we going to vote for a mayor without this knowledge? And where will they be based? And will they care that 2027 is being commemorated as the 1000th year since William the Conqueror was born? I would suggest that we need to appeal to our Labour colleagues to fight and promote the desperate need for fairer funding to our county to enable us to accept local government reorganisation in its fullest sense for the sake of our residents and their future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vicky. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to first start by just saying how pleased I am that Councillor John Barnes is well on the way to recovery. I was delighted to hear that, and I'm sure we all were. I can't hope to rival Councillor Barnes, actually, in my ability to set out a case. So my apologies for not rising to his standard. So first of all, I very much agree with everything that was said by Lorna Thorder and Councillor Oliver. I think you're absolutely right in what you've argued. I have had a chance to look at the Scythe model. I looked at it in some detail. And I don't think that it's something that we should be putting forward, not even as another possibility to consider, because it is so clearly contradicting the government's requirements. It doesn't meet the population requirements. It doesn't meet the requirement that boundaries should follow the existing county and district boundaries. On the contrary, it crosses them. I counted 80 changes that would have to be made from the situation if the district boundaries were followed. 80 changes. What an administrative nightmare. And that's before you even begin to consider the problems of disaggregation from the county. So, for my word, that's just a no-no. There's no way that could be undertaken. It would be an administrative impossibility. I think we've got to watch out for the kind of arguments to go. There may be a few small changes. There may be a few challenges. This kind of political language is a way of concealing the fact that the option is not really viable. And I think Lorna Thorpe has made a really key point here, that when we talk about this, we're not merely talking about administrative convenience, we're talking about the effects on real human beings. So if there is a person in a particular area who's used to working with a particular social worker, and then they go through a period of uncertainty, they don't know whether they'll be working with that person or not, they might be assigned somebody on a temporary basis, and then they might have to work with a different social worker. There are very large numbers of vulnerable people whose lives will be seriously disrupted if we went down a road that would involve the kind of proposals in that view. Okay? It doesn't meet the expense one. It would cost between an extra 50 and 60 million pounds. So when we've got Wilden saying, no, we can't agree to one East Sussex because it would start off with debts of 50 million, the 5 unitary model would add 50 or 60 million to that. That doesn't make any sense at all. And when the government is not prepared at the moment to change the way in which it funds local authorities, the effect of going down that 5 unitary model would be calamitous. It's certainly something which just simply wouldn't work and would disadvantage people. So I want to add to what Councillor Mary Barnes was saying, and Councillor Cook, because I agree with them both. First, I agree with Councillor Cook about the importance of town and parish councils and taking account of their views. And I would like to see structures and requirements to take account of those views written into the new procedures. Secondly, working with community and voluntary sectors. That's another way to address the democratic deficit, to be in touch with the people who are there on the ground. So I think that's another thing we need to do. I agree with Councillor Mary Barnes about area committees. I think the area of those committees has to be smaller if there's going to be an effective way of dealing with the problems of particular districts. And lastly, sorry, 2 more points. First of all, I think we need to think about people's assemblies. That's a model that has been used in many areas where you educate your population. I very much agree with the idea that you need to educate people so they understand what's going on a whole range of issues. And I think people's assemblies have been proven in Northern Ireland to be a very effective way of doing that. It's a model I think we could borrow. Now, my last point is, Lewis, as you rightly say, is at the edge of the county as it is now. I think if you're going to make a new start with a unitary, I think you've got to ask yourself, where's the best place to unify the new unitary from? Would that be Lewis, or is that too much on one side of the proposed unitary. So I think there has to be a question about where's the best place to put the actual centre of this new unitary. But broadly speaking, I agree very much with what Councillor Oliver said and what Lorna Thorpe said. And also I think Mary Barnes made the decisive point. I'm a convert, as you know, Doug, to the idea of the Unitary Council. I wasn't in favour of it, but I've been persuaded because I've seen the advantages, and the case is made brilliantly here. And I think Mary Barnes has actually pointed to the main thing, which is by integrating housing and social services, there can be huge benefits to individuals on the ground, and that's the main argument that swayed me. So I hope very much we will agree to go with the one East Sussex model, and I very much hope we will not actually make the mistake of confusing the whole issue by coupling it with an alternative plan which is not 1/10 as good. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Legg.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I haven't got too much to say about this, except that I have the feeling that, first of all, I ought to say that an amazing amount of work has been done, and it's obviously, in such a short period of time, it's fantastic to see that happen. At section 6.1.4, just as a start, perhaps we could reword the 3 words that say benefits of reform, and maybe put benefits of reorganisation. Thank you. There are clearly great benefits in having something spread over a large area. There are benefits of not rocking the boat and not changing things too much. But East Sussex County Council Mark II, which sounds like a dodgy old second-hand car that you might do, may not be the best solution, because there is a lack of support from Lewis for these areas. There is a benefit in reducing the size of those districts, maybe to 4 or 5, because it brings our residents closer to the services. So I think that we should support another option and put those two. This model, of which there are many, many benefits, but also there is another case that has been put forward of 5 districts, and I think that we should put that as an option for people to decide on, our voters. Thank you.
I think sort of in response to that, I would say that is not on our agenda. Whether that will be discussed more at full council, probably, possibly, I don't know. You know, we only see it. It only turned up last Thursday, I think it was. So why has it come so late? And my thoughts on it is that Brighton are already a unitary authority. So why would they want to sort of, to coin a phrase I heard earlier today, a smash and grab into Lewis and places? Why would they want to do that? Then you could argue, well, if they're going to come through where, you know, if they went through a coastal strip, as we've heard their colleagues sort of say, coastal strip, well, why would Hastings want to be tied up with Brighton? That's even worse than Hastings being tied up with Lewis, because Brighton's further away. So, you know, that's a sort of, there's no way Brighton are going to move out of Brighton, are they? They're not going to come in. So I don't know whether that's a discussion for Wednesday. I'm not sure, but here, sort of here and now, we're sort of looking at this one to sort of, you know, the points of, as you say, benefits of reform. Depending on your point of view, it could, if you wrote there, if it's on there, benefits of Conservative Party, there'd be an uproar, wouldn't there? So no, I can see that may need a slight adjustment. Benefits of local government reorganisation. Might be better, well spotted. Yeah, we're sort of having a look through this to sort of save council doing it on Wednesday, effectively. Terry, Councillor Byrne?
First of all, apologies for being late. I'm confused, and it could well be my problem. Looking at the executive summary, the 18, page 18, says the business case sets out the preferred model for LGR, the ceremonial area of East Sussex and Brighton and Hove. This is the creation of one East Sussex, fine, a single unitary authority covering the existing East Sussex county boundary, with Brighton and Hove City Council remaining as a separate unitary authority. Have I not really understood the one East Sussex? Because when you look at options 1 and 2, one says one East Sussex for everybody, and option 2 appears to have Brighton and Hove doing its own thing. So the one East Sussex option is definitely still maintaining Brighton and Hove as its own unitary.
Yes, yes. So when we put the interim plan together, we didn't know then that we would be invited to, for the ceremonial area of East Sussex, to put proposals together. And what we have said in East Sussex, we have that mandate on the interim plan to push forward with the 5 districts and boroughs and the county council on the county council boundary to work on a business case. And what the one East Sussex means is that Brighton and Hove stays as is, and that the rest come together into one authority based on the county boundary of East Sussex. So it's county boundary and Brighton and Hove as is. The second option that we're looking at is also Brighton and Hove as is, but a hypothetical, if there were 2 councils, what would that mean for disaggregation, and what would that mean for the disruption to services? So that's what we've assessed. And what I didn't mention, and is set out in the report, is that the 3 options that are mentioned in paragraph 8 of the covering report have all been assessed against the 6 criteria in paragraph 7. And that's the option appraisal, but that should be made clear that there are no changes to Brighton and Hove for that first option and that second option. Does that clear that up?
Yes, sort of.
Sort of.
I mean,
Okay.
the second thing I wanted to say was there seem to be 2 dimensions to this. There's the straightforward business case, which I think is well made, and I echo Mark's comment that the amount of work that's gone in, I had no idea we were going to be presented with such a well thought out business case. You've got the business case on the one hand, you seem to have the political case on the other hand, which is where you can either say people are looking at democratic deficit or representation, or you can view it purely as various parties wanting to still retain the upper hand, and they've done a numbers game on if we add this and this and this, who gets control. So the business case, I think, is just game, set and match. It's made. As an independent, I therefore, think that that should trump the minor political or the smaller political interests. And because it is finance that's giving us the trouble in the first place. And if we're looking at nationally based statutory services, then how do we still give them a local flavour but in the most economic way, then this business case is it. So I'm fully behind the one East Sussex as I now understand it.
One East Sussex doesn't include Brighton.
One East Sussex is 2 East. Yeah, one East Sussex is not actually one East Sussex. Yeah, fine.
It's always, yeah.
Silly me.
One sort of thing you sort of mentioned on, Terry, about economic democratic deficit, and I've heard that said many times prior to 2019 in this chamber. Now, Bexhill, arguably, whatever side the fence you want to be, has its own town council, which is now a good thing. So how does this? Not that it affects us. You know, we've all got parishes, but my sort of thoughts have been on Eastbourne is a borough council. They will need a town council, do they? When they disappear. Same with Hastings. Hastings has a mayor, a member of the Cinque Ports, and everything else. Well, they need a new town council to look after their parish interests. You know, when I was, you know, over the years, I was a speaker of the Cinque Ports, and we went to House of Lords to put a case so that Folkestone and Ramsgate could, instead of being chartered trustees as members here were Bexhill based, they could actually have a town council, and they got that permission a few years later to actually form new town councils in Ramsgate and Folkestone. So would that, you know, is that something that Lewis, Eastbourne, Hastings are going to have to do as well? Yeah.
It's not compulsory at all, and the government's not saying that you need to be parish to go through this process, and I think it will be down to those councils to decide whether they want to have a community governance review and put those town councils in place. I would just like to make a comment about the neighbourhood governance side of things, and on page 30 of the business case, it sets out a very sort of high-level principles that will guide us really in developing the models of neighbourhood governance. And we had thought about going a bit further with that, and if you recall, we had a member briefing on this topic. But I think we do need to recognise that the government's still to put guidance out on what it expects. It's floated some ideas about neighbourhood area committees. But I do think this is something that we will continue to want to work on and influence. It seems to me to be something that we've done a lot of work, and Alice has done a lot of work in leading a piece of research looking at what's worked in recent unitary authorities elsewhere, and what has worked, what hasn't worked. And there's a lot of learning there, but I think one message back to government is that it needs to work on a local basis. You can't prescribe what that looks like and implant that on an area. So that might be an area that we wish to kind of pick up, perhaps in our covering letter, and something that we'll continue to work on as we go forward through the next steps. So wasn't possible to say exactly what that would look like in this business case, but I think the principles set out on page 30 are a good start in trying to take this piece of work forward. So it hasn't been thought about, because it has been thought about, and it definitely came out on the consultation as probably the most consistent concern of residents and stakeholders. So it is something that I think needs to be addressed, and we really need to get in there and start shaping it.
Alice, do you want to sort of say anything about any of your research you've done? You've done a lot of it, so you may as well hear some good or bad bits that you might have found out. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I looked at other areas that already have neighbourhood area committees or equivalents in place. That included Cornwall, Wiltshire, Somerset and Buckinghamshire. I approached the officers and we kind of discussed what worked and didn't work. So it varies in each area. Some areas are a lot more formalised in their approach. Places like Wiltshire, it very much feeds into the committee process. In other areas, it's more of a partnership-based approach. They did say that they had a lot of partners involved as well. So again, that varied. They had town and parishes on all of those groups in every area, so they were represented, as well as businesses, partners, emergency services. So yeah, it was very much a local approach. with a lot of variation between each area. But yeah, it's very useful.
Thank you. Thank you. Very interesting. Good. Terry, you're back.
Had I been here at the beginning, I would have made a declaration that I'm also a member of Bexhill-on-Sea Town Council. And the Town Council versus the Neighbourhood Board, it's a bit of a conundrum. On the one hand, the Town Council should be, I know we were a new Town Council, and that's probably where the problem lies, that it's almost saying we need a neighbourhood board because the town council is not made up of prominent local people or who've got various interests within the town, whereas surely that's exactly what a town council should have. Now, I don't know whether that's true of parish councils. I'm aware that many parish councillors are just turn up; they're not even elected. But is that the way forward, or should we be looking at refocusing the work of parish councils and town councils, making those relevant to local tradespeople, local businessmen, prominent local citizens, so they do come forward? I mean, we seem to have fixed a problem by saying, well, they haven't really come forward, so we need something else. We'll have a neighbourhood committee. It's just going to get more and more difficult, I believe, for the neighbourhood committee to work alongside a town council. It'll merely be a matter of personalities as to whether it does work or not, but it's an organisation which I think has a potential for friction rather than cooperative working, though I'm pleased to say I think in Bexhill that won't be so because of the way the committee is balanced and the way it's been selected. But there are still questions from councillors saying, well, who selected these people? Where did they come from? Why didn't, are we not representative? Were we not voted in? So there's an area for looking at there, and I think it could be a thorn in the side of not just Bexhill, but many town councils looking at their neighbourhood boards and saying, why do you need essentially another version of a town council that's appointed, not elected?
I suppose it could be quite different in the countryside. If you've got a large town, you've got a town here, 45, 50,000 people in a town council. But if you're out in the countryside, in the sticks, it might be an area board. I don't know how big they would be, but if all of a sudden it's made up of parish councillors from half a dozen small parishes, and then the local sort of ward members to the new authority, then that's going to be a different kettle of fish, and everybody's sort of getting their input because my parish in Playden with all four of us aren't going to have as big a voice as Rye with 16 of them. But if we was to, and equally Rye Foreign and Iden and Playden and East Guildford, who will meet once a year, just because they have to, that's sort of more where I'm looking at, and probably the same around back with the smaller parishes there would. So that's more how it would work from my sort of point of view, as opposed to Bexhill, where you could just come and talk to the town council. That would be the area board, wouldn't it? Maybe potentially. Councillor Burton.
Yes, as the conversation, thank you, Chair, as the discussion continues, there'll be more, my list gets longer and longer of comments, but I obviously will restrict myself. Actually, on just a couple of comments on the wording on page 44, item 5.7, could we have nature rather than natural beauty, picking up Councillor Barnes's comment? That's the moment, and I would say that we should be talking about nature. And reform is used a few times, so double in the document. You might want to double check on that in the future. I think some of the thought that is must be behind us when we work is not to create 3 layers of decision makers. The mayor, the new unitary, and the parishes or the neighbourhood, what do they call it, the neighbourhood area committee. So we need to be sure that we aren't creating 3 tiers that people have got to work with. And what creates the tier, or creates the reason for residents to contact any authorities, is about predominantly service provision and how they feel, rather than how they're going to vote when the moment comes. So it's about where the services are based and where you get your answer from, so you don't have to go to 2 places. So that brings us back to who is providing the services. And it is a positive move, I think, to have a unitary authority where the predominance of the bigger services are going to be provided from. And as my employment was service provision in adult social care, it's really important to look at the shape of that geographical area. So I would be very reluctant to have a long, skinny anything in our structure, because service provision becomes more expensive and less efficient as you longer and thinner. So it goes on then to the help supporting the town and parish councils. I think quite a lot of us are saying, yes, the boroughs need to have their town and parish council, whatever they decide to do, so that you've got that local voice where people can call in. But they need enhancement. We're presuming on the finance that it doesn't cost any money to run a town and parish council apart from the precept. Whereas if you want to bring people coming in, say, for their library inquiry, that they can go to their town and parish council and ask about that, rather than, or even they might be linked together. So the more trying to think about finance for those town and parish councils and the election of those councillors, they're going to want to serve. They want to serve because it's a valued post, rather than, well, nobody else wants to be a parish councillor, so okay, I'll do it. You know, we need to boost up the responsibilities and the services that the town and parish councils are responsible for. Might even be thinking about bringing some smaller parishes together, so they've got a bigger identity, more clout together. A little bit fragmented, my comments, but hopefully something useful.
Okay, thank you. Any more? All quiet? Anything to sum up, Lorna?
Yeah, I think so.
Doug?
If I can make a comment on the towns and parishes. I think we have a decent working relationship with the towns and parishes within Rother, and it's something which has been sort of thrown into the mix, if you like, as whether or not Rother could put themselves forward as of this area as a pilot, to say that we understand, you know, there are going to be these changes. But I think that in order to shape that, in order to create something that's workable, and given the work that Alice has done in identifying elsewhere, we might be able to just create something and be part of it, and sort of put our hand in the air and say, look, why not use this area as a model? It's just something which I think would be very useful for us to gain advantages from.
Yep. Okay. Lorna?
Thank you, Chair. I think there are a number of kind of factual things there that came out that we can change in the report, and you know, the Ramsar sites and triple SIs and things like that. We can beef that bit up of the report, and certainly the language around reform we can also feed back in. I think just on the Mayor, Councillor Cook, it will be a combined authority that covers Sussex and Brighton, so it won't cover Surrey, so it will be a mayor for just Sussex. So that's good news. I think the importance of towns and parish councils might be something that you want to feed back in the covering letter. It's something that the government to date, whether they're changing their thinking, I'm not quite sure, but to date they've been a bit dismissive of the role. And I think it comes back to your point, Councillor Byrne, about the fact that they're not all elected, and actually they see the neighbourhood area committees, it would be the local councillor at the unitary level that is the decision maker there, or is the person that's representing those local views, or the people that on those boards. So they don't see that kind of formalised role, I think, for towns and parishes. But we all know how important they are to the fabric of life in Sussex. So that might be something that we put in the covering letter. And I do agree with Doug that actually, you know, perhaps we should push ourselves. This really matters to Rother. And we know that one size doesn't fit all in just Rother. So the idea that it will in a East Sussex council is quite difficult to get your head around. So I wonder whether we should also make a recommendation that we'd like to be part of any pilot around the neighbourhood governance work, and we'd very much like to help shape it.
Yeah, sounds like a sensible thing. I think we should big up parishes, parish councils especially. You know, they are arguably the experts in their own patch. You know, and in the last few years we've been asking them to do, you know, neighbourhood plans and everything else. So they know their neighbourhood. That's why they've been asked to do a neighbourhood plan. You know, that's a fact, basically. And I think that skill is, you know, and local knowledge should be used. You've got a skill set, make use of it. You know, local knowledge is key. Just you know, just make use of it. Same with, I forgot what I was going to say now, so it doesn't matter. No, I think that, yeah, that's worth mentioning. I think that is worth putting in a letter, and the pilot. You know, if we can be a pilot of working with this to sort of get something useful out of these area sort of panels. Obviously, you know, it's the ward. It's going to be the new ward members who make decisions, but yeah, you know, they're not going to know their patch. They're going to be dealing with a newer patch and a bigger patch, and they may be completely new and green to the whole thing. Right? So who, you know, any help that they can get from locals is got to be useful. Terry.
Thanks. When in doubt, follow the money. Now, if town councils and parish councils are still going to raise a precept, and if a town council or a parish council with a neighbourhood plan is still going to get 25% of SIL, they're going to be pretty important. They're going to be quite an administrative, financial entity. So you could have a neighbourhood board receiving grants from the government which are supposed targeted, and a town council deciding what to do with a considerable amount of revenue. Again, I just don't think those things have been integrated. It's not really been looked at, but the financial aspect, I mean, at the moment in the town council, presumably we're going to have to think, well, shall we spend on this, or is the neighbourhood board going to get a grant for doing that? So lots of toing and froing. It would be so much easier if it was a more integrated, or it was defined what a neighbourhood board does and what a town council does. But it's the money rather than the representation. I'm happy that we will still represent our wards. I'm equally happy that what we now think of as county councillors, if they're now members of the new unitary, are in a very good position to represent local concerns to the unitary authority. But as I say, locally spent money, and this is what really matters to a lot of people. So I don't think that has been really looked at. It's not addressed really in the business case. The whole precept and 25% of SIL, especially with the new government's built with the government's new housing targets, it's quite a lot of money. So we should be looking more accurately at how we spend it, who spends it, and who spends it at whose behest. Is it the behest of the elected representatives, the neighbourhood board, or what?
Right, a new boy wants to have a word. Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, the fourth way forward from Councillor Legg, is that going to be considered, or bringing Lewis into Brighton and Hove? Is that seriously being considered?
So the business case does assess the expansion of Brighton and Hove into Lewes. So the business case does that at the moment. The bit it doesn't do is the proposal that we saw last week from Brighton on the creation of 5 councils across Sussex. So that came very late in the day. So we didn't have a chance to assess that proposal against the models that we have here and put it into the business case. So I personally feel we haven't had enough time to look at it. And in terms of compliance, I know the report says it is compliant, but in terms of population, the fact it hasn't had any kind of engagement or consultation is a problem. So what the government will do I didn't really talk about the next steps, but so what happens next is the government will assess the proposals that it receives against its 6 criteria. And it may take some of those proposals forward for formal consultation, and it may not. So we saw that in Surrey, where Crawley and Reigate and Banstead had put together a proposal for what was called, I think, the Gatwick Diamond, as a council, and the government didn't feel that met the criteria, therefore it didn't go to the statutory stage of consultation. So other councils may put that forward as a proposal. We know that Brighton and Hove will, and then it will be down to the government to assess that against its own criteria and say whether that goes forward. We expect the consultation to take place in November to January time, and a decision by government in March next year. So I didn't mention the next bit of the timetable, and it's probably important that we understand that.
Yeah, because it's obviously very important. It's operational efficiencies, isn't it, really, as opposed to any other sort of ideas you might have.
Ultimately.
Chair.
Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I mentioned various drawbacks of the 5 unity model, but a further one is that Lewes did actually ask its residents whether they wanted to go in with Brighton and Hove, and of course they overwhelmingly said they don't. So that's another criteria it doesn't meet.
I should have also mentioned that Brighton did consult on the expansion into Lewes, and so did Lewes, and I think it's fair to say that was really rejected by the residents of Lewes, and that part of it was consulted upon. But what hasn't been consulted upon is carving up Sussex into 5 councils. That has just come forward as an idea from Brighton, so doesn't actually meet that requirement of have had engagement on the proposal.
Councillor Burton, did you indicate?
Well, actually, one question's been answered, but my other comment was about the covering letter and suggesting, as we are green to the core, that in the covering letter we should be emphasising climate, nature, carbon reduction. Those are our principles that we want to work on. Thank you.
So this covering letter, Lorna, will that be presented to council?
I think I have put in the report, I have said in the report, in the recommendation, that the leader and I have authority to write any comments into a covering letter. I think we say correspondence in the recommendation. There may be some other points that we collectively want to make across East Sussex, and there might be some very specific things, as Councillor Burton says, about our own priorities that we might want to also put in there. So I think that we've got that delegation. If you're happy to take that, we'll take the comments that are said from this committee, from council next on Wednesday, and we'll make sure that they're reflected in the covering letter.
Okie dokie, thank you. Right, anyone else? Doesn't look like it. So what we got here, I looked online, no one there. So the purpose of the report, as Lorna said earlier, to consider the business case for local government reorganisation in East Sussex, the proposal for the creation of a new unitary council, for submission to the Ministry of State for Local Government and English Devolution by the deadline of the 26th of September 2025. Same proposal is also being considered by all other East Sussex district and borough councils and East Sussex County Council. Our officer recommendation is to it be resolved that this committee consider the business case and its appendices and provide any comments for consideration by full council to enable Cabinet to approve the proposal on the 24th of September for submission on the 26th of September. So I would say that we have done that. We have made our points. The things will basically go in the covering letter. So does someone want to propose we do that? Councillor Cook.
Happy to propose.
And I'll go with Councillor Gordon.
Second.
Councillor Gordon's happy to second. All those in favour, please show. That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is that, as they say. So, meeting declared, finished at 1 minute to 7 via my watch. Thank you very much.